On July 25, 1991, Michael Landon died from pancreatic cancer at just 54 years old, and in doing so, closed a chapter of American television that had shaped generations. Not long before his death, he stood before a national audience and spoke with calm acceptance, acknowledging uncertainty without surrendering dignity. For many viewers, this moment was deeply unsettling, not because it was dramatic, but because it revealed the vulnerability of a man long associated with strength, guidance, and reassurance. Landon had spent 3 decades portraying characters who helped families believe in forgiveness, resilience, and moral clarity, and now he was confronting his own ending with the same steady composure. His passing was not simply the loss of a beloved actor, it marked the quiet collapse of an image Americans had trusted since the early days of television. Yet that calm exterior masked a lifetime shaped by pressure, discipline, and unresolved emotional weight, all of which had followed him long before the public ever noticed. A childhood shaped by instability and survival. Michael Landon was born Eugene Maurice Orowitz in 1936, growing up in a household where emotional tension was constant rather than occasional. His early years were marked by instability, cultural isolation, and the strain of living in an environment where safety felt unpredictable. His father, while present, struggled to assert authority or provide consistent protection, leaving young Eugene with an early awareness of vulnerability. His mother, a former performer whose ambitions had stalled, carried frustration that often spilled into the household, creating an atmosphere where emotional volatility shaped daily life. Rather than breaking him, this environment trained Landon to internalize stress, remain alert, and rely heavily on self-control. Silence became a defense, imagination an escape, and determination a necessity. These early conditions did not simply influence his personality, they quietly forged the internal discipline that later defined his work ethic, leadership style, and need to maintain control over the worlds he created, both on and off screen. Athletics, loss, and the collapse of a first dream. As a teenager, Landon found refuge in athletics, particularly javelin throwing, a discipline that rewarded focus, precision, and measurable progress. For the first time, success felt objective and earned, not dependent on emotional approval. His talent led to a scholarship at the University of Southern California, representing a rare moment of optimism and forward momentum. Yet even there, competition and isolation resurfaced, and his sense of belonging remained fragile. A serious injury abruptly ended his athletic ambitions, dismantling a future he had quietly relied upon. The loss was not dramatic, but deeply disorienting, stripping him of an identity he had hoped would carry him beyond his past. With no clear path forward, Landon entered a series of labor-intensive jobs where long hours and repetition reinforced discipline and endurance. These years were humbling, but they instilled resilience and patience, traits that would later define his ability to endure rejection and uncertainty in the entertainment industry. Finding acting without chasing fame. Landon's introduction to acting was not driven by ambition or fantasy, but by proximity and opportunity. While working near Warner Brothers, he accompanied a co-worker to an audition with no intention of participating. Yet the experience revealed something unexpected. Acting allowed him to exist without constant self-defense. It offered a controlled space where emotion could be shaped rather than suppressed. Encouraged to pursue training, Landon balanced work by day and acting classes by night, approaching the craft with the same discipline he had learned through labor and sport. Changing his name to Michael Landon was not reinvention for glamour's sake, but a symbolic separation from earlier wounds. The years that followed were filled with small roles and frequent rejection, yet persistence prevailed. In 1957, I Was a Teenage Werewolf provided his first recognition, not because of spectacle, but because his restrained intensity felt authentic. It opened a door by proving he could communicate internal struggle without exaggeration. Bonanza and the Weight of Sudden Stability. In 1959, Landon's life changed with his casting as Little Joe Cartwright on Bonanza, a role that would define his early legacy. The series became a cultural cornerstone, bringing color television into millions of homes and offering a consistent presence during a changing era. Landon's portrayal balanced energy with sincerity, earning trust through familiarity rather than spectacle. Yet success arrived alongside personal loss. That same year, his father died suddenly, forcing Landon to assume financial responsibility for his family while maintaining an intense filming schedule. fear of instability, rooted in childhood, returned with urgency, driving him to work relentlessly. On set, he maintained composure and humor, while privately absorbing pressure that never fully released. As Bonanza thrived, Landon began to recognize the importance of creative authority, not for ego, but as protection against chaos. Stability, once achieved, became something he guarded fiercely, even when the cost was emotional distance. Creative control and the birth of Little House. As Landon transitioned into writing and directing, his insistence on consistency became central to his leadership style. This approach found its fullest expression in Little House on the Prairie, where he served not only as lead actor, but as creative architect. The series succeeded because of its moral clarity and emotional restraint, offering stories that respected hardship without exploiting it. Landon fostered a supportive atmosphere on set, particularly for younger cast members, blending warmth with high expectations. Yet authority inevitably brought friction, as decisions rested with him alone. The series' longevity and global reach reflected the effectiveness of his vision, but it also intensified the pressure to uphold an image that blurred personal and professional boundaries. When his private life faltered, the contrast between public perception and reality became difficult to reconcile. Still, Little House endured because it spoke honestly to universal struggles, reflecting Landon's belief that storytelling should heal without denying complexity. Change, controversy, and ending on his own terms. As Little House evolved, Landon made the deliberate choice to allow its narrative to mature rather than stagnate. Shifting focus toward Laura's adulthood was rooted in storytelling integrity, not ratings anxiety. When the series concluded with the destruction of Walnut Grove, audiences were stunned, but the decision reflected Landon's philosophy: stories should end honestly, not linger without purpose. Practical necessity influenced the choice, yet its execution transformed logistics into symbolism. The town was not erased by force, but dismantled by its people, carrying their values forward. This act reinforced Landon's refusal to preserve legacy through inertia. Following Little House, Highway to Heaven marked a tonal shift, exploring faith and redemption through transient lives rather than permanent communities. Though television trends moved toward faster, edgier narratives, Landon remained committed to reflective storytelling, even as his work fell out of sync with industry momentum. Family, relationships, and the cost of motion. Throughout his life, Landon sought family as refuge, yet struggled to remain still within it. His marriages reflected different stages of his emotional development, each shaped by timing, pressure, and unmet needs. Early relationships formed during instability eventually gave way to distance as success accelerated. Later marriages carried the weight of public scrutiny and internal guilt, particularly when personal choices conflicted with the values audiences associated with him. These fractures did not define his character, but they complicated it, revealing a man still learning how to balance ambition with presence. Despite regret, Landon continued striving for connection, ultimately prioritizing family during his final years. His relationships were not without pain, but they reflected a persistent desire to correct earlier failures. In this sense, his private life mirrored the themes of his work: imperfect people navigating responsibility, consequence, and the hope of renewal. Facing mortality and leaving a human legacy. When diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 1991, Landon chose transparency over withdrawal, addressing the public with the same composure that had defined his career. Treatment was aggressive, decline rapid, yet his focus narrowed to clarity and choice. Family gathered as time allowed, though misunderstandings and distance left lasting sorrow. In his final days, words were few, presence sufficient. His death prompted national reflection, not because he was flawless, but because his work had accompanied millions through ordinary life. Tributes acknowledged both his influence and his humanity. Landon's legacy endures not in idealization, but in honesty. Through Bonanza, Little House, and Highway to Heaven, he shaped television as a space for moral reflection without sermonizing. His stories remain because they respected pain without exploiting it. Michael Landon is remembered not for perfection, but for offering dignity, compassion, and meaning in a medium often tempted by excess.